We were not wired as human beings to be motivated by long-term goals and checkboxes. I had a question the other day from an individual at a talk, and he said, how do you stay motivated for long-term goals without fatigue and anxiety setting in? And I think it's an awesome question, because the reality is when things do seem far off and there's a space between where we actually are and where we want to be, or where we actually are and where we think we are, that's where anxiousness and fatigue can set in. So how do we make sure that that doesn't happen? I went to the podcast, I went to psychology, philosophy, and I found two big things that I want to share with you that I believe will make sure that that doesn't happen. So the first idea is achievement motivation theory, coined by John Atkinson, but before that he took his ideas from David McClellan, who was a Harvard researcher that studied human achievement and motivation. So what does this all mean? Achievement motivation theory says that the closer we are to a goal, or the closer we think we are to a goal, the more motivated we're going to be, and vice versa. The farther off a goal may seem, the less motivated we're going to feel. So if you think about this in your life, if you reflect on this idea, when are you the most motivated? The first 5 steps of the race or the last 5 steps? The first 2 minutes of the test or the last 2 minutes of the test? Most people would say that we are so motivated and so focused during those last 5 steps, during those last 2 minutes of that test. So that makes me think that the focus on these long-term goals that social media and the media itself and movies are tailoring us to look at these long-term goals, we just get in our own way. We need to break those goals down. What can I accomplish right now today? What can I accomplish? Feel excited that, wow, and satisfied and courageous that, oh, I can tackle that today. Okay, let's do that. I can tackle that tomorrow. Let's do that. Not that long-term goal that might be daunting, slow you down, a little bit of anxiousness, fatigue. No, let's stay motivated, breaking these goals down, continue not only to stay motivated, but build up momentum. And I think that's key. The next idea is where we put our attention. And this came from a developmental cognitive neuroscience paper that I was reading from the National Institute of Mental Health. And this idea, also very simple, also very powerful, is where do we put our attention? When we're chasing something down, when there's something we want, a goal we want to achieve, where do we put our attention? And now again, society today puts focus on goals and checkboxes and statistics and numbers. But does that motivate the human mind that existed before the prefrontal cortex, before we could understand these numbers and everything? No, we're all emotions, motivations from our subconscious mind. That's what truly motivates us. So we can focus on 2 different things: goals or stimulus and feeling. So if we think about that, I like the example of exercise. We have a goal of exercising a certain amount of times a week, or we want to lose a certain amount of weight, whatever that is when it comes to fitness. This is a perfect example. You can focus on the goal and the checkbox. I went to the gym today, check the box off. Now, what does that do for our body? How does that fuel us? Well, it's very frontal and it doesn't really last long. Okay, I went to the gym, checkbox. But what if we balance the two? That goal, that checkbox, with a stimulus feeling of the situation. So think about it this way. We check off the box, but as soon as we finish that workout, we stop and think, wow, I feel pretty good right now. I just accomplished that. Feel those endorphins. How do I feel right now? Wow, pretty good. That's going to fuel us to stay motivated. That's going to fuel us to do more of the same. But if we block that out and focus just on numbers, just on checking off that box, well, it's not sustainable. That's not how we were built. That's not how our motivations work. That's not what really keeps us going. And I think it's the balance between the two, because I'd be wrong if I said that checking off that box doesn't give us some type of gratification. Yes, of course it does. But I think a focus has to be more on that stimulus, because that's how we as human beings function. It's not as much the statistics and numbers. Another way you can look at this, which makes it nice and clear, is we can keep it nice and simple. Focus on that stimulus. Focus on how we're feeling as we're moving toward a goal, which is nice and simple for our brain. We don't have to explain it to ourselves. We just focus on that good feeling. Or we use the more of our frontal brain, focus on that checkbox, focus on the numbers, and have that complicated idea of what success is and what's bringing us closer to success, which that complication in itself can stress us out, make us anxious and tired, which is a problem. We want to stay motivated. We want to keep things simple, stay energized, and working towards that goal. We don't need to overcomplicate things. And as always, there's usually a caveat to these conversations. I love that though. I think you got to understand both sides of the coin. And the caveat is the research that I pulled this from was from adolescents moving to adults that were stimulus driven. And one of the arguments is that if we just focus on how we're feeling in stimulus, we'll look for those feel good emotions, we'll take shortcuts, and unfortunately we could get into some impulsive behavior. Now, I think that could be said for anything, but if you use this the right way, those feel good emotions, when you're doing the right things, and I think we all know what those right things are, you're more likely to stay motivated. You have to include the caveat, I apologize, but it's reality. We have to watch where and when we're focusing on those stimuli and what we're conditioning in our chase towards something greater. I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to share more stuff like this that's inspired by the podcast, researched in science, philosophy, psychology, etc., packaged up and shared for you. If you're enjoying it, remember to subscribe. And also, if you want to be entertained, excited, and educated, check out the Heroic Minds podcast anywhere you listen to your podcast. And also, send me an email if you want to keep this conversation going further, or comment below. I'm Ben Fanelli from Heroic Minds. Let's keep getting out of our own way and be the best that we can be.